Here's another top 10 list. These are my top 10 great underrated westerns. These are westerns that you may never have heard of, that people probably don't talk about too much when they put together top 50, top 100 westerns list. I'm going to praise these movies and single them out because I do think they're actually pretty good. Maybe some of them are great. That's up for you to decide. Mosey on over to Letterboxd down below in the description to my greatest westerns list, and I've got a pretty big list for those of you who are interested in such a thing, and my own personal rankings of westerns. Number 10 is a very strange western from a strange period, and you'll see a couple movies from this period, this 1970s or after the 60s, after the Vietnam War. This is The Missouri Break starring Jack Nicholson. This is directed by Arthur Penn, who is very well known, and it's a strange movie because Marlon Brando shows up and seems to be inhabiting a whole different realm. He's a unique character. Apparently he improvised his lines, frustrating everybody on set. You have to see it to believe Brando in this movie. Of course, this is 4 years after The Godfather, super famous after that movie. And it's this very strange movie about psychopaths and sharpshooters out west. I recommend it if you like sort of cynical, darker westerns that are slower paced. Number 9 is a sadder western that I think can be stomached by more people. It's The Ballad of Gregorio Cortez. This is mostly a chase movie that's centered on a Mexican ballad. This takes place in Texas, where a Mexican Hispanic person is harassed by law enforcement. He's actually accused of murder, and we see various perspectives. What did he kill the person he is alleged to have killed or not? And then he's chased for half the movie. Then there's a trial for another last third of the movie. And this is a really touching western starring Edward James Olmos that I highly recommend. It's really well done through and through. Number 8, totally underrated here. A lot of people hate this movie. Go on the internet and search for it, but it's one of my favorites actually, but with Paul Newman, who was a key to westerns, as you'll see another Paul Newman on this list. This is Robert Altman's Buffalo Bill and the Indians. I really like this movie, even though you have to sort of stomach a totally different style. This one features Buffalo Bill's Wild West show in the 1890s, after he's done all of his exploits in the earlier part of his life. Here he's putting on a huge stage performance that in the movie, they argue, is likened to a Hollywood studio. In fact, the movie says that the Wild West shows of Buffalo Bill are like a proto-Hollywood studio, and he's like an executive and a star, and he's trying to get this other star in his show who was Sitting Bull. Very interesting political movie put out in 1976 with the Indians and the Cowboys. And I really appreciate this movie a lot. So I suggest you seek it out if you've never heard of it. Number 7. I think number 7 could be number 1. This is a really, really good movie. I think Jimmy Stewart was in a lot of good westerns. Obviously, a lot of good movies. But this one he makes really good. This is The Man from Laramie. Stewart plays Will Lockhart, a stranger who comes to town, and he's involved with ranches and politics on ranches. And this movie looks like it's straightforward, but if you watch it and you start to think about it, it gets really complex. This is by Anthony Mann, the great director from the 1950s, or very prominently working in the 1950s. And I think this is more thoughtful than about 90 to 95% of westerns I've ever seen. Number 6 is a movie that had to have influenced the Coen brothers. This is John Huston, who made a number of great westerns, including The Treasure of the Sierra Madre. But here, The Life and Times of Judge Roy Bean, starring Paul Newman. This is a very trippy, weird western that has some concepts in it. It's more of a concept film, maybe, with a number of surprisingly awesome cameos. You've never seen cameos like this, or there are very few movies that have them that make effective use of cameos. Anthony Perkins, Stacy Keach is in here for a couple of minutes, just shockingly. And I think this movie is really interesting, also about America, the history of America. Paul Newman, it has to be said, is in a number of westerns, like this one and The Buffalo Bill, but also, of course, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid and Hombre. And I think he's one of the key western stars ever, but probably not thought of that way. Yeah, I think 2 movies in this list sort of proves that fact. My number 5 movie is Jubal by the underrated director Delmer Daves. Go seek out any movie or many movies by him. They're very good, including his westerns. This is a super melodramatic western, and it's from the 1956 with Ernest Borgnine. Glenn Ford stars in it. Really interesting about cattlemen accused of stealing sheep. And this is in the Criterion Collection. It's very thoughtful. I really enjoyed the ride of this movie, no pun intended. That's a problem with a lot of westerns. It's hard to know what's going to hypnotize any any viewer and get them into the movie and liking and loving it. But I appreciate the melodramatic effects because it's a great looking Western as well. Get the Criterion Blu-ray version if you're going to try it. Number 4 on my list is by a great Western director, a very acclaimed one, Sam Peckinpah, but it's not one you're probably thinking of. This is Major Dundee. And Major Dundee stars Charlton Heston. It's got Richard Harris in it, James Coburn, number of stars in it. I love this movie. I think it's really good. Now, there's all kinds of history to it, background. This may not be exactly a Peckinpah movie. It kind of sort of is, but it's a post-Civil War movie, which is a lot of Westerns are about what happened after the Civil War. What did the soldiers do? What did they get themselves into? How did the war kind of continue in the West against the Indians and so on? Here you have an invasion of Mexico, and this involves ex-Confederates and Union soldiers working together. But Richard Harris is a great turn in this movie. I love Heston, and frankly, this movie needs to be watched more. I think this is a good classic sort of Saturday afternoon guy movie. So Major Dundee, seek it out and try it. Now, speaking of movies, not very well known by absolutely great directors, Sergio Leone. You know him from a lot of movies. The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, for example. Once Upon a Time in the West is probably my favorite Western. But this one people don't know about. It came after all those spaghetti Westerns. From 1971, it's Duck, You Sucker, sometimes with the title A Fistful of Dynamite. Rod Steiger sort of plays this wild Tuco-like character in the movie. Tuco, of course, from Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. James Coburn is very cool and awesome in this as an Irish sort of IRA dynamiter, and they're going into Mexico to help with the Mexican Revolution in the 19-teens. This is a classic Leone movie. It has all the Leone trappings, but he's at his peak here. He's as good as ever. You may not like the plot as much, the length of the movie may need to be shortened, but I just absolutely think this is a great movie that no one knows about. Duck, You Sucker. Go seek it out if you've liked anything ever by Leone. Number 2 is a movie I can't believe I'm putting up here this high. I don't even know why I would do this. So it's really remarkable to me. You go into movie history and you find all kinds of movies that no one's heard of or very few people have. This is Destry Rides Again from 1939, that vaunted year. Destry Rides Again stars Jimmy Stewart as a sheriff who has no gun. The Stewart character is in a tough town. Marlene Dietrich is in this as a saloon owner. It's a really, really fun movie, interesting movie, a little bit of melodrama, and I really think this movie, you go check it out, Criterion Collection. And if you like any sort of old-time Westerns, the John Ford stuff, if you like Jimmy Stewart, I don't see how you can't love Destry Rides Again. My number 1 all-time underrated Western is a modern Western. It's set in modern times, not in the 1870s, 80s, or 90s, and people will give me grief about that, but I do think this has all the trappings of classic Westerns, just set in the modern world, which is perfectly fine. It's Tommy Lee Jones's Three Burials of Melquiades Estrada. When this movie came out, a lot of critical praise. Read Roger Ebert's stuff on this. This is from 2005. Tommy Lee Jones is a very, very smart, I think intelligent and thoughtful artist as a director, not just as an actor, but director. He's only directed like 3 movies, and they're all excellent. This movie is about dreams and delusions, law and justice, being restless, the place of women in the Western landscape of the Western world. This movie has so many well-crafted characters, 4 very well-drawn-up characters, and then it has classic Western plots that are blended and reworked. I just absolutely love this movie. I could watch it every year and get something new out of it. So that's my number 1, Three Burials of Melquiades Estrada. Now, there have been tens of thousands of Westerns made, and I know that some have been undiscovered, some you know, but nobody else knows. What is your underrated Western movie list? What movies have not a lot of people heard of? Ordinary people, let's say, they never heard of these movies. What is your list? Let us know in the comments, and then we'll have a great comment section where people can mine it for suggestions. Let us know. Please subscribe to this channel for more great content. Thank you, and have a great day.